What would you do if you discovered that your ancestors weren't who you thought they were your whole life? Imagine an old wooden box hidden in the attic of your ancestral estate, and inside it, letters yellowed with age revealing a secret so terrible that it could destroy not only the family's reputation but also change the course of the entire lineage's history. In the depths of the Russian province, where winters are long and harsh, and the forests hold centuries of secrets, a story unfolded that people preferred to keep silent about. A story about a young man whose name was erased from the family chronicles, about whom it was not customary to even whisper. Subscribe to our channel to learn the darkest, most secret stories that aren't told in textbooks. It all began on a cold autumn day in 2018 when Andrei Sokolov, a 32-year-old historian from St. Petersburg, received an unexpected inheritance, an old house in the village of Vyshegorye, lost among the forests of the Pskov region. The house belonged to his great-grandfather, and the family hardly spoke about him. Sokolov, who was engaged in studying noble families of the Russian Empire, saw this inheritance as an opportunity to delve into his own family's history. The first thing that struck Andrei when he arrived in Vyshegorye was the silence. Not the peaceful silence that you expect from the countryside, but a depressing, crushing silence, as if the village itself was plunged into eternal mourning. The house stood on the edge of town, a two-story structure with a mezzanine, built in the late 19th century. The paint on the walls had long peeled off, the shutters were askew, but the foundation remained solid, and the overall appearance inspired a certain gloomy grandeur. The house looked as if it was hiding something. Sokolov later said in an interview with a local newspaper, "I immediately felt that something bad had happened here. The air inside was stale and stuffy, but not from dampness or time, from something else that I couldn't explain." On the very first evening, Andrei began to inspect the house. The floors creaked under his feet, and the old furniture was covered with a thick layer of dust. On the first floor were the living room, dining room, and kitchen. On the second, the bedrooms and a study. It was in the study, in an old mahogany secretary, that Andrei discovered the first strangeness. A hidden drawer carefully disguised as an element of decor. When I opened it, the first thing I smelled was not mustiness or old paper, but something chemical, sharp, like the smell of old medicines, Sokolov recalled. In the drawer lay a small leather notebook with the initials MS. Mikhail Sokolov, Andrei's great-grandfather. Opening the diary, Andrei didn't immediately understand what he was dealing with. The entries were made in small, neat handwriting, but many pages contained incomprehensible formulas and diagrams. The dates ranged from 1910 to 1917. The first pages were filled with ordinary household notes about the weather, the harvest, family matters, but gradually the tone of the entries changed. Today I received a letter from Professor K. His theory about hereditary traits and the possibility of changing them is of great interest. It is necessary to study it in more detail. Read an entry from April 23, 1911. The further Andrei read, the stranger the entries became. His great-grandfather, it seemed, was fascinated by the ideas of eugenics, a pseudoscientific movement popular in the early 20th century, which aimed to improve the human race through selection. The second experiment yielded no results. The rats died 3 days after the introduction of the solution. It is necessary to change the concentration, Mikhail Sokolov wrote in October of 1912. Andrei spent the entire night in the study, immersed in reading the diary. By morning, he understood that his great-grandfather was not just interested in eugenics theoretically. He was conducting some kind of experiments, first on animals, and then an entry from March 3, 1913 made Andrei's blood run cold. Today, I used the solution on a human for the first time. Object AD, 23 years old, strong build, minimal dose. Observation continues. What Andrei discovered in his great-grandfather's diary was only the beginning of a nightmare. Further pages revealed a picture that made his blood run cold. Mikhail Sokolov, a rural doctor by education, became carried away with ideas that, even by the standards of his time, were monstrous. He believed that it was possible to cleanse and improve human blood with the help of special chemical compounds. Object AD shows the first signs of changes: worsening vision, increased sensitivity to light, side effects, or a result of the impact on hereditary material. Further observation is needed. Read the entry from April of 1913. André closed the diary, feeling nauseous. He understood that he was holding in his hands evidence of crimes committed more than 100 years ago. But something told him that this was only the tip of the iceberg. The next day, André decided to ask the locals about the past of the house and its owners. The village of Vyshegori, once large and prosperous, now numbered only about 30 houses, inhabited mainly by elderly people. Many houses stood abandoned with boarded-up windows. The youth had long since left for the cities. In the local store, the only one in the entire village, André struck up a conversation with the saleswoman, Maria Petrovna, a woman in her 60s. "The Sokolov house?" she asked, and something like fear flickered in her eyes. "That's a bad house. My grandfather used to say that the master there, your ancestor, that is, was doing something strange. He was treating people, supposedly, but in his own way. And those whom he treated then changed." "Changed how?" André asked, feeling a chill run down his spine. "In different ways. Some started to go blind, some became feeble-minded, and their children were born unhealthy. The village said that he was spoiling people's blood, poisoning the lineage. After the revolution, he was arrested, but not for that, but as a bourgeois. The house was nationalized. They made a school there first, then a medical center, and then abandoned it altogether until the 90s. Then your family got it back." André thanked the woman and left the store, deep in thought. The words about spoiling the blood and poisoning the lineage sounded like superstition, but in light of what he had read in the diary, they took on a sinister meaning. Returning to the house, André continued his search. He methodically examined every room, every closet, every drawer. In an old sideboard in the dining room, he discovered a box of photographs, yellowed snapshots from the early 20th century. One of them depicted a middle-aged man in a three-piece suit, with a neat beard and a penetrating gaze. On the back was written, Mikhail Sokolov, 1911. But André made his real discovery in the attic. There, among old suitcases and broken furniture, stood a massive chest, locked. The lock was old and rusted, and André managed to open it with a crowbar that he found in the shed. What he discovered inside made his heart beat faster. The chest was full of papers, letters, medical records, experiment logs, and among them, a thick folder with the inscription Project Revival. The project is aimed at creating a means of cleansing the hereditary material from degenerative traits. Read the introduction written by Mikhail Sokolov. Humanity has become mired in degeneration. Diseases, dementia, moral decay. All these are signs of racial decline. My remedy should become a salvation, cleansing the blood and reviving the true potential of man. What followed was a detailed description of the composition of the remedy. A complex mixture of chemical substances, many of which André, not being a chemist, could not identify, but among the ingredients were mentioned arsenic, mercury, and some plant extracts. The most shocking thing was that Mikhail Sokolov documented the results of using his remedy on real people. In the folder were the medical histories of several dozen people, peasants from the surrounding villages who turned to him as a doctor. Patient IK, 36 years old. Diagnosis: rheumatism. Treatment prescribed: standard remedies plus experimental solution number 7. Dosage: 2 drops per day. After 2 weeks, improvement in general condition noted, but photophobia appeared. After 1 month, worsening vision, impaired coordination. After 3 months, complete blindness. Experiment discontinued. André flipped through the pages, feeling mounting horror. His great-grandfather systematically experimented on his patients, giving them his remedy without their knowledge or consent, and the results were catastrophic. But the most terrible thing awaited him at the end of the folder. There were separate entries, titled Hereditary Effects. Mikhail Sokolov tracked not only the condition of his patients but also their descendants. The daughter of patient IK was born 1 year after the end of the experiment. The same symptoms are noted: photophobia, progressive vision impairment. Hypothesis: the remedy affects the hereditary material. Changes are transmitted to offspring. There were dozens of such cases. Children and even grandchildren of Sokolov's patients suffered from strange diseases. Developmental disorders, blindness, mental retardation. He had poisoned not only his patients but also their descendants. Entire family lines, entire lineages. At some point, Andrei couldn't take it anymore. He put down the papers, went outside, and stood for a long time, breathing deeply of the frosty air. The sun was already setting, painting the snow in rosy tones. The village seemed deserted. Not a sound, not a movement. I realized that I was holding in my hands proof of a crime of such magnitude that even now, 100 years later, it should be brought to light, Andrei later said in his interview. But the story didn't end there. Returning to the house with the firm intention of collecting all the documents and handing them over to the authorities, Andrei discovered another terrible detail. Among Mikhail Sokolov's patients was his own family, his wife, Elizaveta, and their only son, Alexander, Andrei's grandfather. Eliza is showing concern about my research. I had to give her a minimal dose of sedative with the addition of solution number 9. The reaction is moderate. Some drowsiness, slowed speech. Sasha also received the first dose. In his case, I used a modified composition, more sparing. I hope that the side effects will be minimal. Our lineage must become a model for a new, improved humanity. Andrei sat stunned, staring at this entry. His great-grandfather experimented on his own family, on his wife and son. His grandfather, Alexander Sokolov, was one of the victims of these experiments. And then it dawned on Andrei. His father died young from a rare autoimmune disease. Andrei himself had suffered from unexplained migraines and increased sensitivity to light since childhood. His cousin was born with a severe heart defect, and his second cousin was diagnosed with a rare form of anemia. Could all this be the consequences of his great-grandfather's experiments? Could his remedy still be poisoning their blood? This thought made Andrei cold. The next day, Andrei went to the regional center, to the archive. He needed to learn more about Mikhail Sokolov and his research. The archive contains documents from the Zemstvo Council, reports on the state of healthcare in the district, and the personal files of doctors. The archivist, an elderly woman with a keen gaze, told Andrei. According to the documents, Mikhail Stepanovich Sokolov was a rural doctor from 1903 to 1917. He was noted as a qualified specialist with good recommendations. After the revolution, he was arrested as a representative of the exploitative class but soon released. The last mention of him dates back to 1921. He worked in a hospital in Petrograd. Are there any records of his scientific activities, publications, reports, anything like that? Andrei asked. Yes, there are several articles in medical journals of that time, mainly on issues of public health and combating epidemics. But there is also a strange note in the journal Medical Practice for 1915. There, he speculates about the possibility of treating hereditary diseases by acting on the patient's blood. The article was criticized in scientific circles. It was considered pseudoscientific. Andrei asked for a copy of this article. Reading it, he was amazed at how frankly his great-grandfather expressed his ideas, albeit in a veiled form. He wrote about cleansing the hereditary material, about freeing future generations from the burden of degeneration, about a new human free from the diseases of their ancestors. Modern science stands on the threshold of great discoveries in the field of heredity, Mikhail Sokolov wrote. We already understand that many qualities of a person are passed down from parents to children, but what if we can intervene in this process? What if we can correct the mistakes of nature, eliminate weaknesses and diseases even before a person is born? My research shows that this is possible. Returning to Vyshegori, Andrei continued to study the documents from the chest. Among them, he discovered the personal diary of Elizaveta Sokolova, Mikhail's wife. The diary covered the period from 1913 to 1916 and was a thin notebook in a leather binding. Mikhail spends more and more time in his laboratory, Elizaveta wrote in February of 1914. He is almost never home, and when he comes, he seems distant, immersed in his thoughts. He constantly talks about his great discovery, about how it will change the world. I am afraid for him. Lately, he has been giving me some medicine for headaches. After it, I feel strangely sleepy, inhibited. Sometimes it seems to me that he is hiding something from me. The entries became increasingly alarming. Elizaveta wrote about her deteriorating health, about strange symptoms, constant fatigue, vision problems, and attacks of inexplicable anxiety. She was also worried about her son, Alexander, who was 10 years old at the time. Sasha has been sleeping poorly, complaining of nightmares. She wrote in May of 1915. The teacher says that his academic performance has deteriorated. He cannot concentrate on his lessons. Mikhail says that it's nerves and gives him some drops. After them, Sasha becomes calmer, but somehow inhibited, lifeless. I am beginning to suspect that Mikhail is using us for his experiments. God, is that possible? The last entries in the diary were made in a trembling hand. The handwriting became increasingly illegible. I am almost certain that Mikhail is adding something to our food or medicine. Elizaveta wrote in January of 1916. My vision is getting worse every day. Dr. Lebedev from the city says that he sees no physical reasons, suggests a nervous disorder, but I feel that it is not nerves. Something is happening to my body, to my blood. I am afraid for Sasha. I need to take him away from here before it's too late. The last entry was dated March of 1916 and consisted of only a few words. He knows that I guessed. God, help me protect Sasha. The diary ended there. Andrei sat stunned by what he had read. What happened to Elizaveta after this entry? Was she able to protect her son? And how did Mikhail continue his experiments during the Revolution and the Civil War? Andrei found the answers to some of these questions in another document. An official death certificate for Elizaveta Sokolova, dated April of 1916. The cause of death: nervous exhaustion and heart failure. She died just a month after the last entry in the diary, Andrei muttered, and Mikhail continued the experiments on his son. Further searches led him to another shocking discovery. Among the papers in the chest, Andrei found the medical record of his grandfather, Alexander Sokolov, kept by his father. The record contained entries from 1916 to 1921. Subject AS, 13 years old. Continuation of the experiment after a break. Dosage doubled, taking into account age and weight. The first signs of genetic modification are observed. A change in the color of the iris of the eyes, darkening, accelerated growth, increased muscle density. Mikhail Sokolov used his own son as a guinea pig for his most ambitious experiment. He systematically gave him his remedy, documenting all the changes with cold scientific precision. After 1 year of continuous use of solution number 12, the subject demonstrates significant changes. Physical development is 30% ahead of peers. Intellectual performance is also increased. However, negative effects are also observed. Periodic episodes of aggressive behavior, sleep disturbance, hallucinations. Nevertheless, the experiment should be considered successful. For the first time, stable modification of hereditary material has been achieved without a lethal outcome. But the most terrible entries related to 1921, when Alexander was 18 years old. The subject has entered reproductive age. It is necessary to check the transmission of modified traits to the next generation. A marriage with EK, 17 years old, from a genetically healthy family, has been arranged. Conception is expected in the coming months. Andrei read these lines with growing horror. His great-grandfather not only experimented on his own son, but also arranged his marriage in order to check whether the changes caused by the remedy would be passed on to the next generation. EK had to be Ekaterina Kuznetsova, Andrei's grandmother, whom he knew only from photographs. The entries ended at the end of 1921. The last entry read, EK is pregnant, 2 months, condition satisfactory. I continue to observe. This will be the first representative of a new humanity born to a modified father. What happened next was unclear from the documents, but Andrei knew from family history that his grandfather, Alexander Sokolov, moved to Leningrad in the early 1920s, worked as an engineer at a factory, and died in 1942 during the blockade. Mikhail Sokolov was hardly spoken about in the family. He was as if erased from the history of the lineage. But now Andre understood why, and he understood something else. Perhaps his great-grandfather's experiments affected not only his grandfather but all subsequent generations of the Sokolov family, including himself. With this disturbing thought, Andre decided to consult with medical specialists. He contacted Professor Igor Vasilyev, a geneticist from St. Petersburg State University, and told him about his find, providing copies of the documents. What you are describing sounds like an attempt at chemical mutagenesis, affecting the genetic material with the help of chemical substances, Professor Vasilyev explained after studying the materials. In the early 20th century, such experiments were carried out, but usually on plants or simple organisms. The idea of applying such methods to humans would have been considered monstrous even then. Judging by the composition of your great-grandfather's remedy, it could indeed cause mutations. Arsenic, mercury, and some other components are known for their mutagenic effects. And yes, such changes could be passed on to descendants. So, these experiments could have affected me? Andre asked, feeling himself growing cold. Theoretically, yes. Some mutations can persist in the gene pool of the family for many generations. I would recommend that you undergo genetic testing. Modern methods allow us to identify anomalies that may be associated with exposure to mutagens. Andre followed the professor's advice and submitted samples for genetic testing. The wait for the results turned into a painful 2 weeks, during which he continued to study the archives and documents found in his great-grandfather's house. Among Mikhail Sokolov's papers, Andre discovered correspondence with other scientists of that time. Especially voluminous was the correspondence with a certain Professor Krause from Germany, a specialist in hereditary biology. In the letters, they discussed theories of eugenics and the possibilities of improving the human race. Your experiments are of great scientific interest, dear colleague. Krause wrote in one of the letters dated November of 1913. I am especially intrigued by the case you described with patient IK. If the changes are indeed passed on to offspring, we stand on the threshold of the greatest discovery in the history of mankind. Imagine the possibilities. Getting rid of hereditary diseases, strengthening desirable qualities, creating an improved gene pool for future generations. I urge you to continue your research, despite all the difficulties and misunderstandings from colleagues. In another letter, already from 1915, Krause's tone became more wary. The side effects you described are causing serious concern. Aggressive behavior, hallucinations, progressive blindness, this is too high a price. I understand your desire for progress, but perhaps it is worth reconsidering the direction of research. Also, experiments on your own family, Mikhail Stepanovich. I urge you to caution and common sense. Apparently, even European colleagues who shared the dubious ideas of eugenics considered Mikhail Sokolov's experiments excessive and dangerous. Especially shocking for Andre was the discovery among the documents of a photograph dated 1920. It depicted a young man of about 17 tall, with a straight posture and a strangely piercing gaze. On the back was written Alexander, result of experiment number 12. Stabilization phase. It was his grandfather, Alexander Sokolov, turned by his own father into a guinea pig for horrific experiments on modifying human blood. What did he do to you, grandfather? Andre whispered, staring at the photograph. An even more sinister find was a map of the area around Vyshegorye with crosses marked on it. Next to each cross were initials and dates. Andre compared this data with the entries in Mikhail's diary and realized that the crosses marked the burial sites of those whose experiments ended in death. There were 17 such crosses on the map. My great-grandfather was a serial killer, masking his crimes as medical practice. This thought haunted Andre. In the second week of his stay in Vyshegorye, Andre began to notice strange things. It seemed to him that he was being watched. Several times, returning to the house, he discovered that things were not where he had left them. One night, he was awakened by the sound of footsteps in the attic, although he knew for sure that no one should be there. I chalked it up to fatigue and nervous tension, Andre later said. A find of such magnitude, documents revealing crimes 100 years old. All this could have affected my perception, but the oddities continued. The locals clearly avoided communicating with him, and when he did manage to talk to someone, The conversation quickly ended as soon as the subject turned to the Sokolov house or his great-grandfather. "You should leave here, young man," an old woman he met on the road to the village once told him. "There is nothing good in that house, and never has been." "Did you know my great-grandfather, Mikhail Sokolov?" Andrei asked. "I didn't know him, but I heard about him. My grandmother was treated by him. After that treatment, she went blind, and her children and grandchildren all suffered with their eyes. They said, 'He spoiled people's blood, and his own too.' His son, Alexander, was strange. Very strong beyond his years, but somehow wild. And then suddenly he left, and no one ever saw him here again." 2 weeks later, Andrei received the results of the genetic testing. Professor Vasilyev invited him for a consultation. "The results are unusual," the professor said when they met in his office. "Strange anomalies have been found in your DNA that do not correspond to any known hereditary disease. Some areas of your genome show signs of artificial intervention, as if they were altered from the outside." "Altered? Do you mean mutations caused by my great-grandfather's experiments?" Andrei asked, feeling himself growing cold. "Exactly. Judging by what we see, the effect was directed at genes responsible for the functioning of the nervous system and sensory organs. This explains your migraines and increased sensitivity to light. But there are also more alarming changes. Mutations in genes associated with mental processes, aggressiveness, paranoia, hallucinations. All this could be the result of genetic changes caused by your great-grandfather's remedy. Are you saying that all the descendants of Mikhail Sokolov are genetically modified?" Andrei could hardly believe what he was hearing. "I'm afraid so, and, apparently, these changes are intensifying with each generation. Your father died young from an autoimmune disease. This could have been a consequence of the same mutations. And your cousins? You mentioned a heart defect, anemia. All this may be related to your great-grandfather's experiments." Andrei left the professor's office with the feeling that the ground was slipping from beneath his feet. His blood was poisoned. His genes were distorted by the insane experiments of a man who died almost 100 years ago. This genetic corruption was passed down from generation to generation, becoming stronger, more destructive. Returning to Vyshegori, Andrei was determined to get to the truth, to the very end. He had to find out what really happened to his grandfather Alexander after he left the village, how his life turned out, and most importantly, whether he realized that he had become a victim of his own father's experiments. In the regional archive, Andrei found Alexander Sokolov's personal file, opened when he entered the factory in Leningrad in 1923. It contained standard questionnaires and characteristics, medical records, but one detail caught Andrei's attention. In the parents' field, Alexander had listed only his mother, Elizaveta, even though she was already dead by that time. He had crossed out his father's name. He disowned his father, Andrei realized. So he knew that he was a guinea pig in his experiments. Further searching led Andrei to the memoirs of Ekaterina Sokolova, Alexander's wife and Andrei's grandmother. After her husband's death during the siege of Leningrad, she had written a short book of memoirs, which was stored in the family archive in St. Petersburg. Andrei had never read it before, considering it just an ordinary family heirloom. Now he opened it with a completely different feeling and found shocking confirmation of his suspicions. "Sasha never spoke about his father," Ekaterina wrote. "When I asked, he answered briefly. He died for me only once in 1936, when our son Nikolai became seriously ill. Sasha, in despair, told me the truth about how his father, a rural doctor named Mikhail Sokolov, conducted some kind of medical experiments on him, how he gave him strange medicines that caused Sasha headaches and nightmares, and how his mother tried to protect him and died under mysterious circumstances. He poisoned my blood, Katya." Ekaterina quoted her husband. "And now this poison flows in our son's veins. I feel it. I see it in his eyes too, the same thing I see every day in the mirror. A foreign, wrong look. Sometimes it seems to me that someone else lives inside me, someone created by my father." Andrei closed the book, feeling nauseous. His grandfather knew and was tormented by this knowledge his whole life, and his fears turned out to be prophetic. The poison was indeed passed on to his son Nikolai, Andrei's father, and from him to Andrei himself and all the descendants of the Sokolov family. But what happened to Mikhail Sokolov? How did the life of the man who dared to interfere in the hereditary code of entire generations end? Andrei found the answer to this question in the most unexpected place, in an old file of the Leningradskaya Pravda newspaper from 1928. A small note in the city news section reported, "The well-known doctor and scientist, M.S. Sokolov, one of the pioneers in the field of hereditary biology research, has died. Colleagues note his contribution to the development of domestic medicine and his devotion to science. The cause of death was complications after a long illness." But next to the newspaper clipping in the chest was a letter addressed to Alexander Sokolov and dated the same year, 1928. The letter was from a certain Dr. Levin, a colleague of Mikhail Sokolov. "Dear Alexander Mihailovich, I consider it my duty to inform you that your father passed away yesterday in the Mechnikov Hospital. In recent months, he suffered from a progressive neurological disease, the symptoms of which were strikingly similar to those he described in his research as side effects of his experimental drug. Before his death, he spoke a lot about you, expressed regret for his actions, and asked to convey that he realized the monstrosity of his experiments. He also left a sealed envelope for you, which I am attaching to this letter." The envelope was not in the chest, but Andrei suspected that he knew its contents. The last confession of a man whose insane ambitions led to a genetic catastrophe for an entire family. He died from his own medicine, Andrei realized. Just like my great-grandmother, just like many of his patients, he himself became a victim of his experiments. The last few days in Visegrad were the most difficult for Andrei. Now, knowing the whole truth, he looked at the old house with different eyes, as a crime scene where a mad scientist maimed people's lives, including his own family. But the most terrible thing was the realization that Mikhail Sokolov's experiments did not end with his death. They continued in the genes of his descendants, in the blood of all subsequent generations of the Sokolov family. Before leaving, Andrei decided to visit the places marked with crosses on the map. Most of them were in the forest near the house. There were no gravestones or other signs, only barely noticeable depressions in the ground, overgrown with grass and moss. Nameless graves of people who had become victims of insane experiments. In one of these places, Andrei found an old, rusty metal container, buried not far beneath the surface. Inside were glass ampoules with dried, dark contents. On the labels, faded ink read, "Solution number 12. Final formula." This is it, Andrei realized. The very drug with which my great-grandfather poisoned the blood of our family. He took the ampoules to Professor Vasiliev for analysis. The results were shocking. This is a complex organic compound containing arsenic, mercury, and a number of plant alkaloids, the professor explained. In its effect, it resembles a strong mutagen, but with a very specific effect on certain areas of DNA. Your great-grandfather was a genius, albeit a mad one. In the early 20th century, to create such a drug, understanding its effect on heredity, is incredible and terrible. Is there any way to reverse the effects of this drug? Andrei asked. To correct the genetic disorders it caused? Professor Vasiliev shook his head. I'm afraid not. The changes made to the DNA are too deep and specific. Modern gene therapy is not able to correct such complex disorders. Moreover, they have already integrated into your family's genome, becoming a part of it. It's as if someone rewrote the book of your life at the cellular level. Returning to St. Petersburg, Andrei decided to share his discovery with other descendants of Mikhail Sokolov. He had several cousins who already had children of their own. They all had to know the truth about the genetic curse they carried in their blood. The reaction of the relatives was different. Some refused to believe it, considering Andrei's story nonsense. Some panicked, demanding immediate genetic testing. Some accused Andrei of digging up what should have remained buried forever. Why did you do this? His cousin Irina, the mother of 2 children, cried to him. Now I will live in constant fear for my children. What will happen to them? What other side effects will appear in a generation or two? But most still agreed to undergo genetic testing, and the results confirmed Andrei's worst fears. All direct descendants of Alexander Sokolov carried traces of Mikhail's experiments in their DNA. For some, the changes were minimal, for others more pronounced, but no one escaped the genetic legacy. "It's like a curse," said one of Andrei's cousins after receiving the results. "We are all poisoned, and our children too, and their children. How long will this continue?" Professor Vasiliev, who analyzed the genetic data of the entire family, came to an alarming conclusion. The changes caused by Mikhail Sokolov's drug were not only passed on from generation to generation, but also intensified with each new generation. The mutations became more pronounced, affecting more and more body systems. If the trend continues, after a few generations, the genetic changes may reach a critical level, he warned. This can lead to serious diseases, physical and mental disorders, and in the worst case, to the non-viability of offspring. This news was the final blow for the Sokolov family. The family, which had existed for centuries, now faced the threat of degeneration due to the insane experiments of one man. "What should we do?" Andrei asked the professor. "Is there really no way to fix what my great-grandfather did? Modern science cannot yet fully correct such deep genetic disorders," Professor Vasiliev replied. "But it is developing. Perhaps in 10, 20, 50 years, methods will appear that can reverse these changes. In the meantime, you can only control the symptoms, undergo regular checkups, and perhaps think about whether it is worth continuing the family line knowing about such a legacy." The last sentence hung in the air with a heavy silence. To end the Sokolov family line, to accept the voluntary extinction of a family name that had existed for centuries in order to stop the spread of genetic corruption. For Andrei, the only son in the family, this was a particularly painful question. He was 32 years old. He planned to get married and have children in the coming years. Now these plans were in question. "I cannot decide for everyone," he said at a family council convened after receiving the test results. "Everyone must decide for themselves whether they are ready to risk passing on this legacy to their children. But I believe that we must do everything possible to find a solution, to fund research, to attract the best specialists. Maybe we can't help ourselves, but we can save future generations." The family decided to create a fund for research and treatment of rare genetic diseases, especially those associated with mutagenic effects. They hoped that someday science would find a way to fix what Mikhail Sokolov had done. And the house in Visegrad, the place where the experiments that led to the genetic catastrophe of an entire family began, was decided to be demolished. In its place, the descendants of Mikhail Sokolov planted a garden as a symbol of hope for renewal and purification. "Sometimes I think about my great-grandfather," Andrei said in his last interview, "about the man whose ambitions and insane ideas led to such terrible consequences. Was he a villain or just a scientist who went too far in his research? I don't know. But I know one thing. He had no right to play with heredity, with the very essence of human nature. No one has such a right." The Sokolov family continues to exist. Its representatives live in different cities of Russia, work in different fields, raise children, but all of them carry in their blood the legacy of a mad scientist who poisoned his own family in an effort to create an improved human being. And no one knows what other secrets their DNA holds, what changes will manifest in future generations. The curse of Mikhail Sokolov continues to live in the blood of his descendants, reminding us that some boundaries of human knowledge should not be crossed. And in the remote forests near Visegrad, nameless crosses still stand, monuments to those who became the first victims of the experiments. And local residents avoid these places, saying that you can still hear the moans and cries of those whose blood was poisoned. This is how the story of a young man who poisoned his family ends, one of the darkest secrets of Russia, which is not written about in history textbooks. A story about how an obsession with the idea of perfection led to the degeneration of an entire family, and how the shadows of the past continue to haunt descendants even centuries after the tragic events.